It's Josiah here with Easycators.com. And today, I just, over this um, Good Friday, Easter weekend, I wanted to do a quick weekly stock market review of some of the bigger movers of the week. Thought that would, sometimes I like to go over the trades that I missed over the past week and so forth. And I've also lately, I'm mostly a day trader currently, but looking to branch out into more swing trading. And so I've been trying to kind of or go back and evaluate trades that I could have taken during the week based on my intraday system, which uses this relative volume indicator. And that indicator is available on my site, of course. But the the main thing is that I just like to go back and see if there are trades that I could have taken under my current method that I apply to day trading. If there's something that I could have used to take trades on a higher time frame where I could put more funds to work and so forth on a longer time frame trade. And so I thought a weekly review would be in order, especially over this long weekend where uh, got some time on our hands and just wanted to go over some trades here. So I've set my max change from open indicator. This is part of my percent change from open set that I have on the site. And I use this usually on a daily time frame to sort the biggest movers of the day to the top of my list. Movers that are trending. The percent change from close can sometimes hide the trenders because it might take a gap into account and so forth. So I look at percent change from open as to kind of sort through those gaps and find the ones that are actually trading or trending intraday, excuse me, and that that are making a big move off of the open, not just from yesterday's close. But we can also switch this to a weekly time frame or a monthly or any other time frame that you want, and then we can look at the percent change over the past week that has happened. And this is the column that's looking at the max percent change from the open of the week. So it's looking at the maximum distance that we've moved either up or down from the start of the week. And I actually have set this to ATR mode instead of percent as well. So it's actually looking at how many ATR multiples that the stock has moved over the past week. So if the ATR is, for the weekly time frame is $1, and this week we moved $2, then that's 2 ATRs that it's moved for the week. And so that's another function that's available in the percent change from open set. Anyway, so I have my list sorted by ATR multiples from the open of the week. And QCOM is the biggest mover out of my list. And you can see here on the weekly scale down here. So I have a daily chart, weekly chart, monthly, and quarterly. And so you can see on the weekly scale, the ATR, the range in terms of ATRs is, of course, off the scale here. It's, as it says, it's 8.29 ATRs that it moved this week. A huge move. And I was wondering, is there any way that I could have seen this in advance? Well, it so happens that on the quarterly chart, yes, there's a pretty good setup that happened. If you see here on the past quarter that just ended, it was a bottoming tail bar, and it was on high volume churn, so that you can see we were coming down into a support area here, and that support was holding. It was any shares that were getting sold off were getting absorbed, and so there was a lot of shares being traded without much movement actually happening. And so that indicates that there is some support there or demand. And so if you look at this on a quarterly chart scale, you can see that there was a nice 2R trade up to the high, 2 times the size of this candle up to the high that we reached here. And who knows, this may in the next few quarters go ahead and break through this pivot level as well and continue up to 4Rs at the all-time high at 100 or something like that. But it did just in this week break above this range that we had. That was a high churn area on the quarterly chart, and it went straight to its 2R target just this week. So that was a potentially good trade. Of course, I mean, obviously we can see this candle in retrospect and say, yeah, this, we should have bought this, but was there actually a way or a methodology that we could have followed that would have told us this was a good stock to buy if we were trading, swing trades on this this stock? And there is a pretty good setup right there on the quarterly long-term chart. You can see lots of examples of this. We had a setup here coming down to the bottom of this range a long time ago, back in '09, and we put in some churn there at that range, and that one, over the course of several years, eventually got to a really nice target up there. So depending on how you set your stop and so forth, of course. But so these kind of trades, I really like the longer time frames. When those show a signal, like the quarterly or the monthly or the weekly compared to smaller time frames, when those time frames are showing one of these high churn signals, you really need to take notice of that, because that's a bigger, the bigger traders, the long-term investors and that kind of thing, they are adjusting their positions in these high churn candles. And so those types of signals are more important than the smaller time frame signals, in my mind at least. So that's QCOM. We had some other big movers this week. So let's see here. We had TSM moved 1.69 ATR multiples on the weekly scale. And you can see here there's some nice setups here on this weekly chart where the relative volume really pointed out the highs of the range, the lows of the range, highs of the range being tested and hitting supply there. Some absorption happening here, like people started entering trades here at the low of this range again, but they weren't enough to hold it at that point in time. So it did go ahead and break down through. We regained some support. Some people got more interested in through this base here. Eventually we broke back above, and then we had this high churn here, breaking through this this prior level here. And if you notice this tiny little candle with a high churn volume, we were able to massively break above that. If we had broken below, I would have liked this better if we'd tested below just momentarily and then broken above. But this this was a good setup where we hit churn at the high, getting toward the high of a range, but then we're able to subsequently break through that, and you can see here that that would have worked for probably four times your risk. Intel, trying to see here, we got a quarterly signal that happened 2 quarters ago. This monthly signals down here at the bottom of this range, so a break above this high with a stop wherever you can find this that makes sense. I probably would have used the base of this candle myself. And so this one has yet to get to the 2R target. It's getting pretty close though. And so Intel moved 1.2 ATR multiples. Here was a nice daily setup that happened back on the 28th. So we had this directional move up, a pullback. I like to see the churn volume in the bottom of the pullback after it has come off the highs. And so that would have been a good 2R setup there to last week, and then, or a little bit earlier in the week, and then actually 2 days ago it reached 4Rs. So that's those are a couple of setups there. SLB, Schlumberger. Trying to see here. So this one This one had a good move during the week, but it got completely negated by the end of the week with this last day of trading on Thursday. And you can see here that it hit some supply up here with this high churn bar and tested above it and then reversed and came down hard. So that's how that played out. But it looks like, so we've hit some support down here at the bottom of this long-term area here. Bounced on some high churn volume there, came up, and we started forming this range. Had a little bit of a signal here at the bottom of this pullback where some churn came in saying, yeah, there is actually support here. And if you had taken that trade on the weekly scale a couple of weeks ago, this just got to its 2-hour target this week, and those traders exited out right up here at the top of this range. And so we have yet to see if the larger term, longer term, larger time frame traders are going to step back up on this pullback and continue the trend back upward. The shorter term traders have already stepped out of at least part of their positions, and we're going to see if on Schlumberger, if the bigger buyers are going to continue buying it up. So J&J, we had a nice churn bar last month, testing below it here. This is not bullish to me yet. So this week we tested above this range and failed, and came back down on Thursday to the low of this range. I'm not really seeing much that could have been done last week on this. There was a little bit of churn that happened here, and that one, it looks like it just barely got to 2 times your risk during the course of the week. Maybe just failed to get there. So it looks like maybe some traders exited just shy of their target on that, and so yet to see if this is actually going to play out any farther. This was probably the actual trade that should have been taken right here a few weeks ago, which is this kind of weekly 1, 2, 3 pattern. You got a strong directional move inside bar on high churn, saying that when we're pulling back, it's meeting some support here, some demand, and so then we break out above and go straight to 2 Rs. So that one was the actual. That's the type of trade I look for intraday, and you can see another one here. That this one worked pretty well as well. Directional move here inside, and 2 Rs almost immediately. So I like those. More than that, I like the pullbacks with a. You can see one here on this monthly scale on Citigroup. There's a nice little 1, 2, 3 setup. It looks like we're currently doing that on a monthly scale. Again, last month and the month before that were some high churn bars. And so taking this, it looks like this just barely got to 2 Rs here this month already. And we'll see if it continues upward. It looks like we've just hit some supply on the daily level. And so we'll see if that's going to be something we'll break through, or if that's going to be the top for a little while. Looks like we got these lower highs coming in, so there might be a lower high here, but if that gets broken above, then it'll squeeze the shorts, and we might have a long run that way. On the weekly scale, there was this nice little pullback signal here. So we had a directional move, basing, pulled back off the highs, and put in a churn bar saying, yes, there's demand here, and we got immediately to 2 Rs, 2 risk units on the weekly scale within just 4 bars. Wells Fargo, let's see, quarterly we had a nice signal there. Monthly, nice signals here. So this one could have taken like that and gotten to 2 Rs before it petered back out. Now we've broken down, and Yeah, I'm not really seeing a lot going on here. This could have been taken short possibly as a, a retest of this level and this supply up here that tested above, then went continued below. So that one was probably a good trade short, but I don't trade short much currently, so that's probably not one that I would have been looking for. CMCSA. So we had churn set in here on the quarterly, and it was retested here as a level a few quarters ago. The monthly scale, we had the nice little spinning top or doji-ish candle there. And so then we had, it looks like some demand has come in here. A lot of effort was being expended here to buy it up. A lot of shares were trading hands. And eventually we continued breaking above. So that indicates that there was some real demand there. Where buyers were willing to actually step up their bids and not allow the stock to come back down. So it looks like some desperation for shares there actually. So the weekly scale, 2 weeks ago we had this little inside, this doji-ish candle. That one was a decent trade. I like it better when it happens down toward the low of a pullback, but that one, like I said, this is kind of showing some desperation a little bit. So that one probably would have been a decent trade. Let's see, Nike. Nice signals on the monthly chart here. We had a quarterly pullback. Nice signal at the very bottom there of this pullback that worked for, it looks like 6 Rs so far, working its way toward 8. Bottom of this base, you could have been picking up shares at the on these churn bars as it breaks back above. Then we have the directional move, pullback, churn, and that one worked for 4 Rs almost immediately. And now we have this pullback here on the monthly scale, and if you look down here on the weekly chart, you had churn bars coming in at the very bottom of that. So, I mean, you would have seen it like this right here. And we were coming down off of a strong directional move on the monthly, 3-bar pullback on the monthly, put in churn at the very base of that. And as we broke back above, that would have been a good weekly trade or a monthly trade, just however you wanted to play it. But this one would have been a good secondary entry here. Had a kind of 3-bar-ish pullback here, churn down at the bottom of the pullback off the highs. So that one could have been taken as well. And that one has yet to get to target, somewhere up here to close to 92. JP Morgan, it moved 0.8 ATRs on the week. So these are not some super strong movers. To me, it seems like we're, just kind of grinding right now in the markets. We're not making really strong moves. It's just kind of gradually ticking up, and we might be hitting some resistance right now. So on JP Morgan, nice quarterly signal down here at the base of this pullback. Hit churn through here. We eventually broke through. Now we're retesting that on a pullback on the quarterly chart, and trying to see if on the weekly, so there's this nice little signal here at the bottom of this pullback, but I would probably be looking for something on the daily scale at this point after we've broken above this high, maybe a pullback with some churn under in the low area of that pullback on the weekly or the daily chart might be good. So Morgan Stanley, these are all the banks. Yeah, so deep pullback here. Didn't see any churn on the quarterly. There's definitely churn showing up on the monthly. We broke above it here last month. and that triggered. It looks like we had a opportunity there on the weekly as well. And so then we have the daily chart, which did this nice little 3-bar pullback, and there was probably an hourly signal or something on the lower time frame that could have been taken there, and that one probably would have worked pretty well. AXP, not really seeing much going on there. That's not the type of signal I would really look for on that monthly. The weekly, we had a test of this high, pulled back, people bought it up, and so we're testing it again. So this, and you can see on the daily chart, I like this, at the low of this pullback here, we're seeing people absorbing any shares that come in down there. And so eventually the market figures that out and breaks back above. Saw the same thing here, hit some supply there. Yeah, so those are some good signals. I think I missed FOXA. Let's see here. Not seeing much. We have this directional move, kind of a basing pullback. It did come off the highs just a little bit and put in these two churn bars right here. So that was pretty good. Not exactly what I look for, but I prefer it to be above the range and then pull back on top of it. But this was pretty good, and that worked really well. So this week we had this long sell-off earlier and hit some support down here in this range. You can see some churn coming in to support it, and yeah, I don't really see much that could have been done with this one. I mean, it was a trigger, but this is not the context for a long trade necessarily. Monster, really good signals there on the weekly chart at the bottom of this range, where you could have bought up some additional shares every time these dojis broke upward after they put in churn. And so a similar setup here would be a break above this 55.94-ish, 50, yeah, 55, 56 area. A break above there could be a long. So we are seeing some churn there at the pullback here. I mean, it's kind of in the middle of the range. It's not perfect. It's above this. So it's not super ideal, but it is at least a potential trade there. So a break above this basing area could be a good buy. LVS, I like this monthly. We have a directional move, churn put in, kind of a 1, 2, 3 continuation pattern there. And that trigger did happen off the high a little bit. So that's a little bit more ideal than just buying a break of a high. And down here on the weekly, there's this pullback inside that monthly signal. And there was probably an opportunity to see, we can see churn picked up just a little bit here on this last bar. It wasn't super obvious, but if you were watching it due to this monthly signal, then you could have taken that weekly as well, and that one worked pretty well as well. Looks like it got to 2 Rs last week, and so now we're breaking up and trying to go to 4 Rs. Walmart, directional move, the pullback is being absorbed here. Come back, retest that level. Some churn put in as we come back down. And so now we've got this, we've had a directional move, churn, inside bar. We're trying to break above it. It's not super clean. Quarterly chart had a nice signal right there. Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I could have done with this, but it's not really super clean. This is a pullback that I would prefer to see churn right here, and there was just a little bit, but not really super clean, so it would have been difficult to take. Not really seeing anything super clean there. There was a short right there on the monthly, And so as this broke down 2 or 3 weeks ago, that would have been fine. Western Digital. So we're down at the low of this this pivot. There was some churn there, so that means that there were some long-term buyers coming in supporting it there, and it looks like they stepped up to some degree again. And so we had this directional move, pullback, churn. There wasn't a super good signal here on the weekly. The daily did have a pretty good churn bar come in here, so this a break above this red would probably be good. And that one already got to 2 Rs and working its way to 4 Rs. So that's a good one. I'll just go down to the 0.5 level, finish these up because some of these didn't move really well on the bullish direction. Nice weekly signal there a couple weeks ago. Testing down here at this prior churn area, and it got rebought. That's nice. Broke above this pivot, came back down to test it, put in some churn here that probably would have been a good trade to take. This probably would have had to be on the daily chart, but the weekly was pretty clean. It just didn't have the signal on this scale, very, very strong signal anyway. So you would have had to zoom down to the daily to see the signal. Lennar, I mean, nice pullback signals here and here. This one, there was some churn, but it wasn't super clean. Stopped a lot of people out and then continued to work. Had a signal here after a three or 4 bar pullback, churn put in, and reversed off the bounce of this on top of this range here. Noble, some signals down on the low of this range, a little bit of churn there. A lot happened here. So we had this kind of downtrend starting to form, lower highs, and then we broke above that presumptive lower high there and squeezed some shorts out, and there's a little bit of churn put in there. The weekly, clear up some of these drawings real quick. So, on the monthly chart had a nice little doji there with churn. The weekly, there was just this green bar that wasn't super obvious really, so that one probably is not something I would have traded. Apple, I've been day trading Apple a little bit lately. So the monthly chart, so we had this base down here. You can see a lot of churn happening on this scale, so the aggregation of the data doesn't make it super obvious, but there was a lot of churn happening through here, and you can see it in this bar. And then when we broke above that range, at the 2R mark, people started getting out, shifting their positions, and gave you an opportunity to buy the pullback on a break above that, and so that worked. And there's probably an opportunity on a smaller time frame, like 4 hour or 2 hour hourly, down here in this pullback. Broke above, pullback, all kinds of churn going on right there, and this would have been a good buy on a breakout over those doji-ish candles, and those work perfectly. You can see there's a nice 1, 2, 3 kind of setup there on Apple that happened on the quarterly chart a long time ago. Similar thing here on a green inside candle or green churn candle. Similar thing there and so forth. So those happen all the time on every time frame. So Cisco, see some churn at the highs here. Churn happened again here and it broke above it. Came back and tested it from above, couldn't hold. And then we based it, stopped out, or not stopped out, but found some support down here at the bottom of the same range again. And then put in this churn bar. This was a good signal several weeks back. And then we've just been in this strong straight up trend on Cisco. And I'm not really seeing a lot of opportunity to get in. We had a few opportunities with, like here's one inside churn bar that happened that was pretty good. There was a little bit of churn that happened right there. You could have bought over that. Churn at the bottom of these pullbacks is what I really like to see, saying that buyers are stepping up and absorbing anything that's being sold down there. And so that one worked for 2 hours there. And just a couple more here. PG, nice weekly signal right here. This is what I really like to see. So we had a strong directional move, pull back off the highs, churn down at the bottom off the highs of this pullback, 2 Rs, and it's working its way to 4 Rs right now. Oops, wrong thing. And there were probably some daily signals here. So there's a daily signal here inside this weekly pullback. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that could have been taken. This was decent, it's not perfect, but there's churn at the bottom of this pullback off the highs. So, I mean, there's several opportunities to get in there. Microsoft, it moved 0.53 ATRs this week. And yeah, there's a little bit of a pullback here several weeks ago that could have been your opportunity to get long in here. You can see on the quarterly chart, there's this nice churn bar. When we sold off, when the whole market was selling off, this churn bar showed you that it was being absorbed as well. There's a lot of absorption going on there. So you can see on the monthly chart, at the bottom of this pullback, that was super, super nice there. We had this strong directional move, pullback, 3-4 bars, put churn in off the highs at the low of this pullback. So that could have been a monthly signal. And also, as we started to trigger that monthly signal, any pullback on a smaller time frame should have been a good signal as well. Like right here, we had a little bit of churn happening on the lower time frame, and so we could have taken this as a smaller time frame entry in the context of this higher time frame signal. And so that's what I got. Coke, I day traded Coke a few days ago, and you can see there's some nice signals here. Churn happening at the lows of these pivots. Those are all really good signals. Have another signal happening here, and this one on the weekly chart looks a lot better, but it's not super clean because we've broken down under this pivot here. It's not really great, but this is saying that somebody has stepped up and started buying at the low of this base here. And so this was a good signal a couple of weeks ago, and there was a daily signal here. We broke above the range, pulled back, churn put in at the low of this pullback on the top of this range. We broke above that and went straight to target. People started getting out of their position at target, 2 Rs. So we started pulling back and giving new buyers an opportunity to get in, and some started to get in here. A little bit of a signal there that wasn't super clean, but that one would have worked for 2 Rs as well. So that's what I've got as far as a review of the longer term charts this week. We'll be back next week and look at some more trades. And in the meantime, we'll hopefully be looking at some day trades throughout the week. And I'm doing these videos to kind of show examples for you relative volume enthusiasts out there. There's a lot of, I think, misunderstanding of how to apply this indicator and how to use it. Whenever, I think a lot of people just want to look at a chart and say, okay, if this highlights, then that's the buy. If it highlights red, that's a sell. If it highlights green, that's a buy. That's not exactly how relative volume works. The color of the candle doesn't always tell you the direction that you should be trading. It's the location on the chart. So you can see here as an example, we've got a pullback and we had a green signal here, but the green doesn't really matter. We would have been looking for a buy at the low of a pullback anyway. And So, and this actually could have been a decent trade as well on a break above the high of this candle if it hadn't, if it had actually broken above the high of this candle, but instead it broke down here and then gave us this new opportunity, and it did break above that opportunity. So that one would have been a good signal. And it doesn't matter that this is red, doesn't matter that this is green. It just matters the location of the signal in the context of the overall chart. You want these signals to be in the pullbacks, at the lows of the pullbacks off the highs, or in the context of like a 1, 2, 3 setup. Like here on the short side here, we had this bearish move, churn happened, we didn't break above the high, and we continued lower. And so that was kind of a 1, 2, 3 entry where you can look to just get in on a one candle signal if it's a clean signal, kind of like that. So those are the types of trades. And here's one on the bullish side, a directional move, kind of an inside churn bar there, and it continued upward. And so those are the types of signals you don't really necessarily care about the color of the candle. You care about where it is in the context of the overall chart and the trend that the chart is showing you. And sometimes signals don't really necessarily mean anything. You have to know at what point on the chart you're going to be paying attention to a signal. I don't care about, if I'm looking to buy pullbacks, then I don't really care what these signals are saying up here. I care, I move on to the next chart until I find a setup that's happening in a location that I would be interested in buying. So some signals, they might mean something, but they don't mean anything to you. And some signals, I think, are just noise in general, so they don't really necessarily mean anything to anybody. You want to look for the signals that mean something to you and that can indicate that that buyers have stepped up in your direction or something of that nature. So the context is everything, and the signal, color, and all that is not necessarily what we're looking for in these. So anyway, I'm just hoping to do these videos to kind of clarify some of those issues, show the type of price action and volume action setups that I look for, that I think are valid, and I'm sure there are tons of other ways to trade with this indicator. I learned trading a certain way, and everybody else learns trading in their own way as well. There are probably lots of trades that I miss because I simply don't know how to trade those types of trades and that kind of thing. Whereas you might know, a totally different methodology than I do. But this is how I look at charts and how I consider trades, and so I wanted to at least provide that perspective, and hopefully this will be valuable to somebody out there. Hopefully we can kind of expand the knowledge base out there about relative volume, and each learn from each other and figure out how to use this to the best of our abilities here. So anyway, we will talk to you next week, and have a good holiday. Talk to you later.